swear I do not believe it. And they are back on terms.
Hello and welcome to New York Talk. This is the Scouting Report, as we're going to look ahead to Saturday's South Yorkshire derby with Doncaster Rovers. We are streaming through Twitter, Facebook and YouTube, so if you want to comment on Rovers' reply to the status on Facebook and Twitter or comment on YouTube, feel free to get involved in any questions you want to put forward or topics you want to discuss. A couple of things we will get through. So let's introduce everybody first. My name's Matt. We've got Mick with us.
Hello.
Danny's obviously with us as well.
Hello, hello.
And we have Liam Hoden joining us from the Doncaster Free Press to all things Donny. Thanks for joining us, Liam.
No problem. My pleasure.
So I think first things first, I've got to talk about what's behind Michael. Other side, yeah. So anybody that's been on our social media this week will see that Mick's upset lots of Wednesday fans, and that is the shirt that Barry Bannon has donated for us to auction off for charity. If you want to see Mick wearing a Sheffield Wednesday shirt, keep an eye out for the podcast, which will be out Friday morning. You'll see a man I've never seen a man that's so uncomfortable in his own clothes before.
That was a difficult hour, let me tell you.
And if you look in the comments, should be able to see the links. If anybody wants to, people already given 400 or something quid towards Rotherham Hospice. If any fans is giving a few more, that'd be fantastic. The links on our Twitter page, on Facebook, and wherever else you can see it. That would be very, very grateful. So thank you much, and Mick, stop winding other fans up.
Well, also, if you just also mention, if you are a Sheffield Wednesday fan, two things. One, why you're watching a Rotherham United podcast again. But secondly, that shirt will be up for auction. So watch out on social media, and you'll be able to pay lots and lots more money to the Rotherham Hospice, which is a wonderful cause.
Absolutely. So let's get back to business. Doncaster Rovers coming to New York for the first time in a couple of years. Liam, it's not been an ideal start for Donny. 1 point from four league games, 1 goal in 6 games altogether. How was the season viewed to start with? Was it expected Donny might struggle? Was it a playoff push? What was the pre-season chat for Donny?
I think pre-season chat were that it were going to be a season of a rebuild, but make it not. There were no. Every year they go into a League One campaign hoping to push for the playoffs, and they've not done too bad at that over the last few years. Obviously, last season had a massive decline in the second half of the season after being in a fantastic position at the turn of the year. This season, new manager, a lot of new players. The expectation was that they'd rebuild and make a decent amount of progress over the year, potentially have a push, but an acknowledgement that it would take a little bit of time. Might take a couple of transfer windows for Richie Wellens to get the squad that he wants, playing in the style that he wants. And the start has not been great at all. I think in result terms, it looks an awful lot worse than what it has been in reality. Some performances haven't been too bad at all. They're a little bit unfortunate. They dominated the game against Sheffield Wednesday at Hillsborough for 60 minutes, and then it was Barry Bannon smacked one in from 25 yards into the top corner, and that was the difference. And I know he won't get it. I know he won't get in Rotherham's team, obviously, but
exactly.
he does.
Mark McCarbench.
Yeah, there you go. But yeah, he popped up with that bit of magic and that one. So what has been a good reflection of where Rovers are and where Rovers have been at the start of the season is that stat of 1 goal in the first 6 games. They have really, really struggled in the final third. They haven't really looked like scoring in a lot of games. They're getting better as the weeks have gone by, but they're missing the first choice front three, including John Taylor, who you'll know very well. No pace in the side really out of John Taylor. He's going to be back in a couple of weeks, but they've been lacking him, Jordi Hawula, Fejri Okanabiri, first choice front three, and that's had a massive, massive knock-on effect. So it's not been the ideal start, but it's, as I say, performances in the main have been there. It's just in the final third, that's where it let them down, and that's why they've only picked up 1 point so far.
I know points are important, but at this stage of the season, performances are almost as important as points, because if the building blocks are there, the chances are everything else will click. And I know you're not scoring, but you're not conceding that many either, which is a really decent sign for a team. If you've got a base to build off, you're probably going to be okay at least, because you'll get some goals.
That's it. I think defensively they've been fine. Midfield's been where the real good progress has been made and the real, bright spark. Richie Wellens, it's all about high tempo possession football, and we've seen the early shoots of that in that midfield. It is just up front. I'm fully convinced that it will click. It might take a couple of months, 2 or 3 months, but I expect before Christmas, especially once those three are back, and fingers crossed they make a couple of additions before window closes next week, I think it'll click, and I think they'll be absolutely fine. Possibly the damage might have been done in terms of pushing for a playoff place, but it is a massively competitive division anyway this season. But I think they'll be comfortable this season, no doubt, and that'll be a real positive heading into next season when hopefully they'll be even stronger.
If we go back a bit to last season, Darren Moore leaving for our friends. How much, I know that would have upset all Donny fans. It has upset a lot of Donny fans, and if it were us, we'd be in the same boat. But on the footballing side of things, how damaging was that to Donny on the pitch? Because it seemed to just take a nosedive as soon as he left.
Yeah, the decline had kind of started a little bit just before we left. I think they'd not won in 5, and they went through a period then where they were struggling to score goals. It was bizarre, really, because the game before Christmas, if they'd have won that, they'd have gone top of the league. They were still in a fantastic position at the start of February. I think they were 4th. So at that point, you're thinking playoffs seemed nailed on. It'd be shocking if they didn't get that. Then the goals seemed to dry up a little bit. Then Darren left, which I still think a lot of the problems that they did encounter in them the last few months of the season would probably have still been there had Moore stayed. It's just whether the decline would have been allowed to go on for as long as it did. I think they won 4 out of the last 22, which for a team that could have been top at league at Christmas, it's a massive, massive decline. It certainly played a part, and there were a few players, particularly some of the loanees that he brought in, that signed for Darren Moore as much as they'd signed for Doncaster Rovers. So him, all of us, and it was a sudden thing. Nobody really were expecting it at that point. And, he took charge of a game on Saturday, no real idea that he were going to be gone by Sunday afternoon, really, when he agreed to go. So the players arrived on Monday morning to be told he's gone. So obviously some of them that were very much his players, that played a big part. They kind of, a few of them had a rocky probably month or so where they come to terms with losing him. So it did have a big impact, but definitely he didn't make many friends in Doncaster with that move, as they kind of showed him at Hillsborough a couple of weeks ago.
I can imagine. Yeah.
I'm not surprised. It's it's a very Sheffield Wednesday thing to do, isn't it? And I know I've upset.
You'll upset some more people.
Don't get clipped again.
But it is, it very much is. It's been, they've done it in the past, haven't they, with other clubs as well. So, I went down in my estimation, Darren Moore, not necessarily because of the Sheffield Wednesday link, but it was just the way it happened. It seemed to me, particularly when he was at West Brom, to be, a real sort of a man of integrity, really. And the way that deal came out and the way it appears to have been done, it just didn't sit right. It didn't sit comfortably with me at all. Sheffield Wednesday at that point, Chansiri's not even paying his players. And yet all of a sudden, he can afford to pay off, say he's going to pay off Doncaster Rovers for their manager. Whether they've ever received any money is another matter. I don't know. I mean, you probably know that better than.
They did get the money. They did get the money, but it was a surprise. The thing for him to go, I think the minute that he were appointed at Doncaster, I think everybody expected that one day he was going to go somewhere else, just because of that profile coming out of West Brom. There were a lot of criticism of West Brom for sacking him at the time. He's very well respected. He'd done a decent job at Donny. I think everybody expected that at some point he would leave. The fact he left for a basket case of a club at the time like Sheffield Wednesday, I think that left a sour taste in everybody's mouth. It annoyed a lot of people. Just basically, the last manager got poached as well, Grant McCann. He went to Hull, but he went to Hull in the summer. to a championship club who, while they were a bit of a basket case themselves, have still got a lot of really high quality players, and there were a real chance that he could have kept them in the championship. I think people have probably come he got a lot of stick at the time, but people have understood that move a lot more in light of what Darren Moore did, which would just seem baffling to everybody that he would jump ship. And I think probably if Darren Moore's being honest, he probably didn't really walk into a situation that he were expecting. He walked into a situation that were a lot worse than what he were expecting. But he's not done a bad job these last few months. So
no, that's true. He eventually got replaced permanently by Richie Wellens, former Donny player. Decent pedigree to prefer as a manager. He's won League Two with Swindon. Did well. Lucky to get sacked by Salford, to be fair. I assume that was quite a popular appointment with Donny fans in general. It seems to fit.
Yeah, I think that even from when Moore went, I think Richie was sacked by Salford within a few weeks. I think his name were at the top of everybody's list for quite a while then. With the links, very, very popular player because of how good he was, basically. And he would, again, when it came around to the summer. But interestingly, Richie had a fair few run-ins with the hierarchy at Doncaster during his second spell. He was coming towards the end of his career, and I think Darren Ferguson ushered him out, and, he's not frightened to speak his mind. That's fair to say. So I think that were the one thing where you thought that might stand against him a little bit here was coming back. But the board was so massively impressed with him through all the conversations that they had that he won them over. But the supporters just loved it from the start anyway. And I think you've seen that over these last few weeks. Despite the start, there's been no criticism of Richie Wellens whatsoever. The annoyance, if there is any, is towards the board for perhaps not spending as much as what supporters would have liked. But Richie, I think he's got an easy ride he will get an easy ride in terms of criticism for a long time just because of who he is.
I think if Rotherham made a similar start to this season, the fans would be going for one his throat, wouldn't they?
Yeah, they would. But he was given a big grace period, a long grace period with Paul Warne for the very same reason. And looking at it from the outside, Liam, it seems that Doncaster are trying to do what we're trying to do, in that they've appointed a manager who's got the club at heart, but has also got the ability, but he's still learning. He's young, he's keen, he's eager, but they're trying to also run the club on the basis that they want the club to survive and not go out and spend stupid money on wages, stupid money on players. And if it takes 2 or 3 seasons to build it back up again and get the club sustainable, then so be it. That's how it looks from an outsider. I don't know whether that's the case or not, but
yeah, that is it. That is it. They've always tried to run, particularly since John Ryan left a few years ago. The owners have tried to run it on a very sustainable basis, business wise as well. They've not managed. That's not managed to transfer to the football side of things on the pitch because they've lost managers. Grant McCann were there a year, Darren Moore 18 months. The hope is now, and Richie Wellens seems to be keen to, having had short periods at other clubs and impressed, he's keen to establish himself somewhere, build a bit of a legacy, and that will only strengthen his own standing as a manager if he can stay somewhere 3 or 4 years and build some success. But yeah, they're willing to take the time, and I think Paul Warne's a perfect example of what can be done if you're given somebody time to put their stamp on things. Because and if you take that step up, but you end up having a backward step and getting relegated, that you don't just immediately panic and sack him. And the stability is massive, particularly for a club the size of Rotherham. Rovers, a similar size club. The natural in the pecking order, your natural thing is a top end League One, bottom end Championship. The hope is that you manage to stay in the Championship, as you very nearly did last season, and then you can kind of reap the rewards of that. But you can't just panic. You can't panic at each. I think Rotherham are in a perfect example of that, and fingers crossed, Donny will follow suit.
Yeah, it does seem that sort of path. It's in current times, it's the only logical path as well. It's the only path that makes sense for clubs like us as things stand. A busy summer for Donny. Like I said, high turnover. I counted 11 new signs, and from what you said, you're probably not done. It's so far early days. Is there any standout signs, new signs that have come in? Any shone so far?
Well, Tommy Rowe came back after 2 years with Bristol City, and he manages to look a better player despite being close to 33 now. I think those 2 years in the Championship have, really sharpened him up, and he's come back playing at that level rather than being an old League One player. He's done really well. They've got Ethan Galbraith in on loan from Manchester United, who's already been capped at senior level by Northern Ireland. He's not played he hadn't played a senior league game for anybody prior to coming to Donny, and he just looks like that. They've talked him up an awful lot, but he does look a player. Play a midfielder, very, very busy, really good on the ball, reads the game really well. He's been particularly impressive. But yeah, as you said, fingers crossed they're not quite done yet. I don't think that there will be any new arrivals before the weekend. Potentially one. That will maybe somebody they're going to sign on a non-contract basis. Richie Wellens is looking for a couple of loans before the window closes, but they won't be in before the weekend. But what they're really looking for is some attacking reinforcements, because as I mentioned earlier, that's where they're short. But some decent signings. Matt Smith on loan from Arsenal, another midfielder. Really good quality ball players. That's going to be what Wellens' side is based on, and he's brought in some perfect examples of that.
Mick heard on the radio the other day, so this might be complete nonsense, that Omar Bogle had a falling out with the club. Is Mick hearing things, or is there an issue there with him?
Well, yeah, he has. It's what's happened basically. Richie Wellens were given a budget and has spent that budget on. He's gone for quality over quantity. The hope was that he'd be able to get a couple of players out who were on decent money, so he could bring maybe 3 or 4 more in and really bolster his numbers. Omar Bogle were at top of that list. He's not done anything in pre-season to take himself off that list. And there's a couple of offers come in that so far Omar has not been attracted by. A couple of top-end League Two clubs. So I think that's frustrated Richie Wellens, to say the least. So it says everything that last weekend against Portsmouth, Bogle was given the weekend to consider his future, consider these offers. That were despite the only other striker in the matchday squad being Thiago Chakua, who's on loan from Watford, an 18-year-old who had no senior experience before the start of the season. They went to Stoke in midweek after Bogle had indicated that he weren't going to take any of these offers. They went to Stoke in the Cup without a senior striker in the squad at all. He named 16-year-old Ethan Harrison on the bench, and he was the only striker in the squad. So, yeah, that kind of indicates where Bogle is in the thinking. I would be as surprised as anything if he were involved this weekend. It won't be. I think the hope is still that he has a change of heart and decides to move on, which would give Richie some more money to play with. But yeah, I think the relations aren't so good, I would say, between manager and player at the moment.
Manager's obviously clearly nailed his colours firmly to the mast on that one, hasn't he? By the looks of that.
Yeah, this is the thing. I think he's said to him, "You're not in my plans. I don't see you fitting into the way we play." And I think his actions over the last week is his attempt to show him how much that he isn't in his plans. So, what happens if he doesn't leave by the end of Tuesday? I don't know. But Richie being Richie, I can very much imagine that he'd be happy to freeze him out entirely, even after that.
Interesting. It's good for a manager. You know where he is. You know that some managers will be quite sneaky about certain things. He's telling him, he's being clear, he's being obvious, and there's no secrets, and that's good for a manager. You want to see that from your manager, not playing games, being honest, but you can't force people out, I suppose.
No. Richie Wellens is ridiculously honest, which is fantastic for people like me writing about the club. He's very clear on what's happening and all that. But whether it can get him into trouble a couple of times, I don't know. We'll wait and see.
It does tend to, as I found out to my cost over the weekend talking about Barry Bannon. So.
Yeah. Let's talk about the derby itself. Rotherham Donny played a lot of times. I think it's like 87th time or something. It's a long standing fixture. How does it sit in Donny's level, as far as from your experience? How is it in Donny's level of rivalries? What is Donny? Is Scunthorpe one of Donny's biggest rivals? Is Rotherham? What's the pecking order? Because as a Rotherham fan, it's a derby, but it's not Wednesday. Wednesday's our sort of big one, if you know what I mean. Yeah,
definitely. I think it's right up there with Scunthorpe. I think it's gone through periods where, depending on how much they've played each other, really, it has been, obviously it's been played an awful lot, but again, it's been quite patchy over last few years in terms of missing each other, going one way or the other. But certainly this season, this is the big one. Definitely the big one. There's been a lot of talk about this one from the start. Obviously, they played Wednesday the other week, and there's a few that class that. But yeah, definitely this is the big one this season.
For anyone who's interested in the games, Doncaster have won 23 meetings. There's been 22 draws and 41 Rotherham wins. That goes all the way back to the 17th of October 1925 in Rotherham's first ever football season.
Wow. Mick likes them stats.
I love flag enough of them. I was there in 1925. I went to that game.
So what can we expect from Donny? I see that you've got a few injuries going forward. Is it going to be? I don't know how Donny sort of see Rotherham. Is it going to be a containment game? You said Richie Wells likes to play football. I don't just going to try and play their own game, change it for us. How do you think Donny will set up the matches?
I think that with injuries, and there's a few more that is sweating on 6 other players. I mean, Tom Anderson, the captain's already out, centre half, and 3 of his usual back 4 could be missing for this game. I don't think it'll be quite as bad as that, but there'll probably be an 18-year-old centre half making his 3rd senior appearance. So I think usually where Richie Wellens goes with a 4-3-3, and that's specifically what he wants to do, it will probably be a 3-5-2, just out of necessity. They played that at Stoke the other night, again, where they were missing an awful lot of players. But they'll not pack a load of men behind the ball. Where Doncaster will look to take hold of the game is in the middle of the park by keeping the ball and moving the ball. That were a big thing. That's what they did it so well at Hillsborough a couple of weeks ago. Against a quality midfield, Barry Bannon included. They look to keep the ball, and they did it for the majority of the game. So I think particularly with the tempo that Rotherham play at and the energy, that's going to be key to it. They're going to have to keep hold of the ball. Particularly, I don't think they're going to be necessarily resolute enough and experienced enough at the back to weather the storm that will come from Rotherham. What it's got to be is controlling the game in the middle of the park, which is what Richie Wellens would want anyway if he had everybody available. But and hopefully finding a bit of spark in the final third.
It's got 0-0 written all over it, this, hasn't
it? Mind you, we said that about the Wednesday game. Look what happened.
Well, yeah, we did. Yeah, I'm going to keep my mouth shut now. I need to learn.
Yeah, you never will. It's got 3-3 written on it. We don't score many. Donny don't score many. It's going to be a goal fest.
Yeah.
Hey, I think the last time we had a conversation like this was about when we played Stoke City at our place last season. We played them away. It was an absolute dreadful, horrible game. And I think their goalie almost scored their goal. It was just, that's how bad the game was. And we previewed the game saying this is just going to be an absolute dour 0-0. Neither team could hit a bull's backside with a shovel. And that turned out 3 apiece, didn't it? They were an absolute screaming game. So maybe that's what Saturday's going to be. Another one of them.
I think if it finished 3-3, everybody in Donny would take that a minute.
Yeah.
Just to see him score 3 goals would be positive enough.
Yeah.
I can't see it coming, to be honest, but
No,
you never know. You never know.
Anything else that you guys want to ask Liam before we finish up?
No, I think we've covered most of it, haven't we? Really, you covered
Yeah,
the
I think so.
thing.
I don't think you're interested in arguments.
No, not at all. I was just interested to know. I mean, you lot have been telling me that I've been hearing things and making stuff up, so I feel vindicated now that I were right.
You just wanted to be right.
Correct.
Okay.
First time in as long as I can remember.
Anyway, thank you everybody for watching on YouTube. If you watch on YouTube, subscribe and like the video if you can. That'd be brilliant. And watch out for Mick wearing a Wednesday shirt in the podcast tomorrow. It's a special treat for everybody. And don't forget to, if you can, donate to Rotherham Hospice. And any Wednesday fans watching, watch out for the auction for the Barry Bannon shirt, which will be going up in a few days' time. Thank you, Liam. Very, very much appreciate you doing this. And we'll hopefully speak to you later on in the season as well.
Yeah, we will. Sorry about that. We'll see you soon.
Freddy's on one-on-one. Freddy turning shoot. Container shot. Yeah!